Through the scope, the world
Got
narrowed
you.
to a single point of
We're
clarity.
almost there.
Maya Garrett had forgotten how much she missed that feeling. The man in her crosshairs was trying to pry open a basement door with a crowbar, his movements jerky with panic or determination she couldn't tell which. 400 yards away, crouched behind the shattered remains of what used to be a parking garage, she tracked his every motion with the patience of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The radio crackled in her ear. "Garrett, you have the shot!" Maya's finger rested against the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself. Old habits. Negative, civilian confirmed. That civilian is carrying an IED. 40 people in the subway station below him. Your call. She watched the man finally wrench the door open. Something bulky shifted under his jacket as he moved. Could be a bomb, could be supplies, could be anything in a city that had spent the last 72 hours eating itself alive. Maya lowered the rifle and rolled away from her position. "Not my job anymore," she said and cut the radio. 3 days earlier, the Arizona desert had been exactly what Maya needed it to be. Hot, empty, and unforgiving in ways that required no moral calculation. The Garrett Precision Training Facility sat 20 miles outside of Tucson, a collection of prefab buildings and shooting ranges that generated just enough income to keep her isolated from the rest of humanity. She taught rich people how to shoot at long distances. They paid well. She didn't have to care about them. The morning sun had already pushed the temperature past 90 degrees by the time her 6 students assembled at the 1,000-yard range. Maya stood in the shade of the observation platform, watching them struggle with rifles that cost more than most people's cars. Owen Cross, a nervous man in his 50s, with the soft hands of someone who'd spent his life behind a desk, was trying to adjust his scope for the 3rd time. The woman next to him, Diane, something kept flinching before she pulled the trigger. The others weren't much better. Maya let them fail for another 5 minutes before she spoke. "You're overthinking it." They looked up at her like students who'd been caught cheating. She walked down from the platform, her boots crunching on gravel that was already hot enough to shimmer. "The rifle does most of the work," she said. "Your job is to not interfere. Breathe. Settle. Press." She reached past Owen and made a single adjustment to his scope. "Stop trying to control the outcome. Just execute the fundamentals." Owen nodded, sweat already darkening the collar of his expensive shooting shirt. "How many people have you killed?" The question landed in the silence like a stone in still water. The other students went very quiet, suddenly very interested in their own rifles. Maya had been asked this before. The answer depended on how you counted and what you considered a person, and whether missions that officially never happened still added to the total. "That's not what you're paying for," Maya said. She walked back to the platform and let them return to their targets. The day crawled forward under the merciless sun. By noon, 2 of the students had given up and retreated to the air-conditioned classroom. By 2, Owen had managed to hit the target twice out of 20 shots. Progress of a sort. The newest student, a woman named Iris Kwan, who'd arrived 3 days ago, hadn't missed once. Maya watched her through binoculars as Iris worked through a series of shots at varying distances. Mid-30s athletic build movements that were too efficient for someone who claimed to be learning self-defense for the first time. The way she loaded the magazine suggested muscle memory. The way she settled behind the scope suggested training that went deeper than weekend courses. Maya lowered the binoculars and made a note in her logbook. Iris Kwan, paid in cash. Background check came back clean, but background checks only found what people wanted you to find. It didn't matter. As long as the money cleared, Maya didn't ask questions. By the time the sun started its descent toward the horizon, the students were exhausted and sunburned, and no closer to understanding what Maya could have told them in 5 minutes. Precision shooting wasn't about the gun. It was about accepting that you were the weakest part of the system and learning to minimize your own interference. Most people couldn't accept that. They wanted to believe skill mattered more than physics. Maya locked up the range and walked back to her trailer, a double-wide unit positioned behind the main building where she could see anyone approaching from half a mile away. Inside, the air conditioning fought a losing battle against the desert heat. She stripped off her dusty clothes, showered in water that never quite got cold enough, and stood in front of the mirror long enough to remind herself that the scar running down her left cheek wasn't going to fade any more than it already had. The nightmare came for her around 2 in the morning, the same way it always did. A little girl's face, brown eyes wide with trust, reaching for something Maya couldn't quite see. Then fire and screaming, and the dull certainty that she could have prevented it if she'd made a different choice. Maya woke up with her heart hammering and her sheets soaked with sweat. She didn't try to go back to sleep. She never did. Instead, she sat on the steps of her trailer and watched the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere out there, people were making terrible decisions that would haunt them for years. Somewhere out there, children were dying because adults had chosen something else. The desert didn't care. The stars didn't care. Maya had spent 6 years trying to achieve the same indifference, and on most days she almost believed she'd succeeded. The knock on her trailer door came the next evening just after sunset when the heat finally broke enough to breathe. Maya had been cleaning her rifle, a ritual that required no thought and filled the hours between dusk and the nightmares. She set the bolt assembly down carefully and checked the security monitor before opening the door. Owen Cross stood on her steps looking even more nervous than he did on the range. Behind him, the desert stretched empty and dark. "We need to talk," he said. Maya didn't move from the doorway. "Office hours are 9 to 5. Please." Something in his voice made her pause. Not fear exactly. Desperation, maybe. The kind that made people do stupid things. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. She let him in but didn't offer him a seat. He stood in the middle of her small living space looking at everything except her face. When he finally spoke, the words came out in a rush. "We're not really students." Maya's hand moved toward the pistol she kept in the drawer next to the sink, but she didn't draw it. "Not yet." "I know." That surprised him. "You know, people who actually want to learn don't pay triple the normal rate. So who sent you?" "No one sent us." Owen ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We came here because we need your help, all 6 of us. Downtown Phoenix has been sealed off by federal authorities. They're calling it a dirty bomb threat, but that's not the whole truth. My daughter is trapped inside the quarantine zone. So are the family members of the other 5 students. We've been trying to get answers for 3 days, and no one will tell us anything except to stay away and let the professionals handle it." Maya crossed her arms. "Call the FBI. The FBI is the one who created the lockdown." Owen's voice cracked slightly. "Something is wrong. They're not evacuating people. They're keeping them inside. And every hour we wait, I don't know if Rachel is—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I need someone who can get inside that zone. Someone with your skills." "I don't have skills. I have a rifle and a business license. You want a rescue operation? Hire a security contractor." "We tried. They all said the same thing. Federal jurisdiction, active threat, no private operators allowed within 10 miles of the perimeter." "But you're not a contractor anymore, are you? You're just a teacher. No one would be looking for you." Maya walked to the door and opened it. "I teach people to shoot targets. I don't do rescue missions. I don't do infiltration. I don't do anything that involves caring whether people live or die. That's not who I am anymore." Owen didn't move toward the door. 6 years ago, you were a Marine Scout sniper. You did 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan. You received a commendation for a mission in Tehran that's still classified. Then you resigned your commission, cashed out your service record, and bought this place in the middle of nowhere. Why, son? The question hung in the air between them. Maya's hand tightened on the door handle. "Because I was good at making choices that other people couldn't live with," she said quietly. "And I decided I didn't want to be that person anymore. Now get out." Owen finally moved toward the door, but he stopped in the threshold. "Her name is Sophie. She's 19. She went to Phoenix for a job interview 3 days ago, and now she's trapped behind a federal cordon with 40,000 other people, and no one will tell me if she's safe or scared or even alive. I don't need a hero, Ms. Garrett. I just need someone who knows how to see clearly at long distances. Someone who can make the hard choices." "Find someone else," Maya said and closed the door. She stood in the silence of her trailer, listening to Owen's footsteps crunch away across the gravel. Through the window, she watched him walk back toward the main building, where the other students were probably waiting to hear that their plan had failed. In the distance, coyotes started their nightly chorus. The sound reminded her of other nights in other deserts, when the sounds meant different things and the choices were measured in coordinates and wind speed, and the knowledge that every bullet changed the world in ways you couldn't take back. Maya returned to cleaning her rifle. Muscle memory guided her hands through the familiar motions while her mind went somewhere else. Tehran 6 years ago, a safe house that smelled like dust and diesel fuel, and the particular staleness of air that had been recycled through too many lungs. She'd been younger then, confident in ways that seemed almost obscene now. Her partner had been a woman named Rachel Voss, 10 years older and infinitely more experienced. Someone Maya had looked up to with the kind of respect that bordered on worship. The mission briefing had been simple: locate and secure a weapons cache before it could be distributed to insurgent networks. Intelligence suggested the cache was hidden in a compound 40 kilometers outside Tehran. Extraction window was 8 hours. Rules of engagement were clear. The mission was the priority. Everything else was secondary. Rachel had been the one who received the updated intelligence while they were en route. 23 American hostages, contractors, and aid workers being held at a different location 30 kilometers from their primary target. The information was solid. The window was narrow. Someone could go get them, but it would mean diverting from the weapons cache. It would mean choosing. Maya remembered the exact words she'd used. "That's not our mission." Rachel had been holding a photograph creased from being folded and unfolded too many times. A little girl with dark hair and a gap-toothed smile. 9 years old in the picture, probably a teenager by now, if she'd lived long enough to grow up. "My daughter Lily is in that group," Rachel had said. Her voice had been steady, professional, but her hands had betrayed her. "Please." Maya had looked at the tactical display at the two targets marked in red, at the ticking clock that showed their extraction window shrinking with every minute of debate. 23 people versus the potential thousands who die if those weapons spread. That's not math. That's basic triage. You're talking about numbers. I'm talking about my child. I'm talking about the mission, Maya had said. If we divert, we lose the primary target. If we lose the primary target, more people die. More children die. I'm not going to compromise the mission for one person. Rachel had stared at her for a long moment. Then she grabbed her gear and headed for the door. "Then I'm going alone." "That's unauthorized. You'll be court-martialed." "I don't care." The last thing Rachel had said before she left was something Maya had replayed in her head approximately 10,000 times since. "One day you'll understand what you're choosing. And when you do, I hope someone shows you more mercy than you're showing me." Maya had let her go. She'd continued to the weapons cache, completed the mission exactly as planned, and returned to base to file her report. The weapons were secured, the intelligence networks were disrupted. The mission was a success. 3 days later, they'd received confirmation that the hostage rescue attempt had failed. Rachel Voss had been captured. All 23 hostages had been executed. Rachel had been listed as missing in action, presumed dead. Maya had been commended for her decision. Her commanding officer had used her as an example in leadership briefings. She'd been promoted. She'd received a medal for the weapons cache operation. And she'd felt nothing at all, which was exactly the problem. The knock came again just after 3 in the morning. This time Maya didn't bother checking the monitor. She grabbed her pistol and yanked the door open hard enough to catch whoever was outside off guard. Iris Kwan stood on the steps with her hands raised, empty and visible. "Don't shoot. We need to talk." "Office hours are 9 to 5, Maya said, but she didn't lower the gun. "Rachel Voss sent me." The name hit Maya like a physical blow. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Then training took over and she pulled Iris inside and kicked the door shut behind her. The pistol stayed level and steady. "Rachel died 6 years ago." "No," Iris said calmly. "She didn't." Maya's hand wanted to shake. She forced it still. "Who are you?" "Oh, someone who's been watching you for 3 months. Someone who knows you're not really teaching wealthy preppers how to protect themselves. You're hiding, but hiding only works until the past comes looking for you." Iris lowered her hands slowly. "Rachel survived the capture. It took her 4 years, but she escaped. She spent the next 2 years looking for you, and she found something else while she was looking. Something that changes everything." "What?" "Lily didn't die in the hostage execution." The world tilted slightly. Maya leaned against the wall, pistol still raised, but her certainty crumbling. "That's not possible. I read the report." "The report was wrong or incomplete or deliberately falsified. I haven't figured out which yet." Iris pulled a phone from her pocket, slowly keeping her movements visible and non-threatening. She held it up so Maya could see the screen. "Lily Voss is 15 years old. She's been held at a government black site for the last 6 years, and right now she's inside the quarantine zone in downtown Phoenix." The photograph showed a teenage girl with Rachel's eyes and the kind of haunted expression that came from years of confinement. She was standing in what looked like a medical facility, wearing a hospital gown. Her arm extended as someone off camera drew blood. "Where did you get this?" "Rachel took it 3 weeks ago. She's been planning this for months. The dirty bomb threat, the quarantine, the federal lockdown. She's the one who orchestrated all of it." Maya's mind raced through the implications. "What bummer?" "Because she wants you to understand what she felt 6 years ago. Desperate, powerless, forced to choose between people you've sworn to protect." Iris put the phone away. "Rachel infiltrated the facility where Lily is being held. She created the bomb threat to force an evacuation. But the government didn't evacuate. They locked the whole district down instead. Now Rachel is trapped inside with Lily, and she's threatening to detonate an actual bomb if no one comes to extract her daughter. 40,000 people are in the blast radius. Then the government will handle it. The government is the one holding Lily prisoner. They're not going to save her. They're going to let Rachel detonate and then blame it on domestic terrorism. Iris took a step closer. Rachel knew you'd refuse to help. That's why she made sure you have no choice. Owen Cross and the other 5 students, their family members, and all inside that zone. Rachel recruited them specifically because she knew they'd come to you. She knew you'd say no. And she knew they'd make it impossible for you to walk away. As if on cue, headlights swept across the trailer's windows. Maya moved to look outside and saw vehicles pulling up to the main building. 6 of them. Her students, except they weren't students at all. They were desperate people who'd been manipulated into becoming leverage. If you refuse, Rachel detonates the bomb, Iris said quietly. If you call the authorities, Rachel detonates the bomb. The only way to stop this is to infiltrate the quarantine zone, extract Lily, and defuse the situation before it explodes. Literally. Maya turned away from the window. Why you? What's your role in this? I'm someone who owed Rachel a favor. She saved my life once in a way you'd understand. So when she asked me to find you and make sure you understood what was at stake, I said yes. Iris moved toward the door. They're waiting outside, Owen and the others. They want you to teach them how to get their families out. They think you're going on to help. I'm not. Then 40,000 people die, including a 15-year-old girl who's been a prisoner since she was 9 years old. Because of you. The words landed exactly where Iris had aimed them. Maya felt something crack inside her chest, the careful wall she'd built between herself and the world, developing a fault line that would only spread wider with time. I don't do rescue missions, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. I know, Iris said. Rachel told me what you'd say. She told me you'd refuse right up until the moment you realized you couldn't. She knows you better than you know yourself, Maya. That's why this is going to work. Through the window, Maya could see Owen and the others getting out of their vehicles. They looked exhausted and frightened, and determined in the way that people who had nothing left to lose often did. They'd driven through the night to get here. They'd spent money they probably couldn't afford. They'd put their faith in a woman who'd spent 6 years trying to forget how to care whether people lived or died. Maya set her pistol down on the counter. Tell them I need 20 minutes. Iris nodded and slipped out into the darkness. Maya stood alone in her trailer, surrounded by the tools of precision and distance that had defined her adult life. The rifle she'd been cleaning sat disassembled on the table, each component carefully maintained and ready for use. On the shelf above it sat the only photograph she'd kept from her service, a candid shot someone had taken during downtime in Afghanistan. Maya and Rachel, both younger and convinced they were invincible, both smiling at something off camera that neither of them would remember now. She picked up her phone and pulled up news coverage of the Phoenix situation. Federal authorities were calling it a credible dirty bomb threat. The quarantine zone encompassed 12 square blocks of downtown. No one in, no one out. Experts on television were speculating about contamination and detonation radius and casualty projections if the threat turned out to be real. 40,000 people, give or take. The math was simple. The choice wasn't. Maya opened a drawer and pulled out the equipment she'd told herself she'd never use again. Body armor, tactical vest, communications gear, a knife that had seen use in ways that still sometimes visited her in dreams. She laid it all out on her bed and stared at it for a long moment, this assemblage of tools designed for one purpose only, to make her more effective at the thing she'd promised herself she was done doing. Then she started getting dressed. The knock came exactly 20 minutes later. Maya opened the door to find all 6 of them standing there. Owen in front, the others arrayed behind him like a jury delivering a verdict. In the pre-dawn darkness, their faces were shadowed and impossible to read. Get your gear, Maya said. We leave in 20 minutes. She expected relief or gratitude or some kind of emotional response. Instead, Owen just nodded once and turned to organize the others. They moved with the efficiency of people who'd already accepted that they might not come back, which was either very brave or very stupid. Maya hadn't decided which yet. Iris appeared at her elbow as the others dispersed. Rachel said you'd do it. Rachel was always better at reading people than I was. She also said to give you this when you agreed. Iris held out a small envelope, the kind used for greeting cards. Maya's name was written on the front in handwriting she recognized immediately. She took it, but didn't open it. Not yet. What's the timeline? Maya asked. 72 hours since the quarantine started. Rachel's deadline is 96 hours. That gives us 24 hours to get in, find Lily, and Get out before she triggers the bomb. And if we can't, Iris met her eyes with the kind of steady gaze that came from having already accepted the worst possible outcome. Then Rachel keeps her promise, and 40,000 people die because you made the same choice twice. Maya turned away and walked back to her trailer to finish preparing. She didn't open Rachel's letter until she was alone again, sitting on the edge of her bed with 20 minutes left before they had to leave. The envelope wasn't sealed. Inside was a single piece of paper with 3 sentences written in Rachel's precise handwriting. You were right about the math. You were wrong about what we were calculating. Now you get to prove which one matters more. Maya folded the letter and put it in her pocket. Through the window, she could see the others loading gear into vehicles, their movements awkward and unpracticed. None of them knew what they were really walking into. None of them understood that the worst part wouldn't be the danger or the fear or even the possibility of death. The worst part would be the choices they'd have to make along the way and the knowledge that there was no right answer to the questions that mattered most. She picked up her rifle and began the final checks that would determine whether it functioned properly when she needed it. The mechanism was smooth and reliable. The scope was calibrated. The ammunition was selected for maximum effectiveness at the distances she'd be shooting. Everything was perfect except for the person holding it, and that was a problem that couldn't be solved with better equipment or more training. In the mirror, Maya caught sight of her own reflection. The scar on her cheek seemed darker in the low light, a permanent reminder of a mission that had gone wrong in ways that had nothing to do with enemy fire. She'd gotten that scar from Rachel actually during a training accident in their first year as partners. Rachel had felt terrible about it. Maya had told her scars were just proof you'd survived something. She believed that then. Now she wasn't so sure what they proved. Iris knocked on the doorframe. It's time. Maya stood and slung her rifle across her back. The weight was familiar, comforting in a way that probably said something deeply troubling about her psychological state. She grabbed her pack and followed Iris out into the darkness, where 6 desperate people were waiting for her to transform them into something they'd never been trained to be. Listen carefully, Maya said as they gathered around her. I'm not a hero. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm someone who knows how to see clearly at long distances and make decisions that other people can't live with. If you're expecting me to save everyone, you're going to be disappointed. The best I can promise is that I'll try to minimize how many people die. If that's not good enough, leave now. No one moved. Good, Maya said, because in about 72 hours, you're going to hate me for the choices I make, and I'm going to hate myself for making them. But we're going to do it anyway because that's what happens when someone puts you in a position where all the options are terrible and you still have to choose. She looked at each of them in turn, memorizing their faces. Owen with his soft hands and desperate eyes. Diane with her nervous energy that wouldn't survive the first real crisis. The others whose names she'd barely learned and probably wouldn't have time to remember. They were going to die or be traumatized or both, and it was going to be at least partially her fault. But the alternative was 40,000 people dead, including a 15-year-old girl who'd already spent 6 years paying for Maya's decision. The math was simple. The choice wasn't. Let's go, Maya said, and led them toward a mistake that would define the rest of however long they had left to live. The tunnel smelled like decades of accumulated neglect and something more recent that Maya didn't want to identify. 60 hours into the mission, and they were moving through Phoenix's underground maintenance system like rats navigating a maze designed by someone who'd hated rats. The concrete walls wept moisture despite the desert climate above. Every sound echoed in ways that made tactical assessment nearly impossible. Maya moved point, her rifle slung across her back, a flashlight in one hand and a suppressed pistol in the other. Behind her, Owen and the others struggled to keep pace. They'd learned some things in the last 2.5 days. How to move quietly, how to read hand signals, how to control their breathing when fear tried to take over. But they were still civilians playing at infiltration, and the gap between playing and doing was measured in mistakes that got people killed. Iris moved beside Maya, her own weapon held with the kind of casual competence that confirmed everything Maya had suspected about her background. Whatever favor Iris owed Rachel, it had been earned somewhere dark and complicated. Junction ahead, Iris whispered. Government's running patrols through the main access points every 20 minutes. We need to cross during the gap. Maya checked her watch. 18 minutes since the last patrol. 2 minutes to get 7 people across an exposed intersection without making noise that would carry through the tunnels like a dinner bell. The math was tight but possible. She held up a fist. Everyone stopped. She made the signal for danger and pointed at her watch. Owen nodded understanding and passed it back to the others. Whatever else could be said about him, he followed instructions and didn't ask questions in the moment. That counted for something. The junction opened into a wider space where three tunnels converged. Emergency lighting cast everything in sickly yellow, creating shadows that moved when nothing was moving. Maya scanned the sight lines, calculated firing positions, and identified two escape routes if things went wrong. Old habits still sharp despite 6 years of rust. She was about to signal the advance when gunfire erupted somewhere above them. The sound came through the ventilation system, distorted but unmistakable. Automatic weapons, multiple shooters sustained engagement. Maya's hand went up again, this time signaling everyone to freeze and listen. The firing continued for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped with the abruptness that meant someone had won decisively. "That's coming from the research facility," Iris said quietly. "Rachel's team or government response, I can't tell which." Maya made a decision she knew was probably wrong but couldn't see a way around. Change of plans. We move fast, and we move now. That firefight means all available security is going to converge on one location. We use the chaos. She didn't wait for agreement, just moved. 7 pairs of footsteps followed her across the junction, moving faster than was tactically sound, but slower than panic would dictate. They made it to the far tunnel with 10 seconds to spare before voices echoed from somewhere behind them. Maya pressed everyone against the wall and killed her light. In the darkness, she could hear breathing that was too loud and hearts beating too fast. The patrol passed without stopping. When the sound of their footsteps faded, Maya risked her light again and kept moving. They had maybe 20 minutes before someone noticed the patrol schedule was off, before someone started asking questions, before the window closed, and they were trapped underground with no good options. The tunnel opened into a service basement that connected to the converted hospital where Lily was being held. Maya had studied the schematics until she could navigate them blind, but schematics didn't account for the reality of a building under siege. She cracked the access door and immediately smelled smoke. The basement was in chaos. Medical supplies scattered across the floor, security monitors showing empty corridors, and blood still wet leading away from an overturned desk toward a stairwell that had been barricaded from the inside. "This wasn't government response," Maya said. "This was an assault. Rachel's people hit the facility while we were underground." Iris was already at one of the working monitors, fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "She's forcing your timeline. The attack started 18 minutes ago. Federal response is 3 blocks out. If we're going to move, it has to be now." Maya looked at the others. They were exhausted, scared, and completely unprepared for what she was about to ask them to do. "We go up into an active combat zone, we find Lily, we extract. Anyone who can't handle that stays here." No one moved toward the exit. Stupid or brave, Maya still couldn't tell. She took point again, moving up the stairwell with her pistol raised. The barricade had been built, hastily chairs and filing cabinets, stacked in a way that suggested panic rather than training. She pushed through, carefully conscious of how much noise she was making and unable to do anything about it. The first floor corridor was a crime scene waiting for investigators who would never arrive. 3 bodies in federal security uniforms. 2 bodies in civilian clothes that might have been Rachel's people or might have been staff caught in the crossfire. Maya did not stop to check. The living were her problem. The dead had made their choices and paid their prices. Gunfire erupted from somewhere ahead, closer now. Maya pressed against the wall and signaled the others to do the same. Through a window, she could see muzzle flashes from the floor above. Someone was making a stand in what the schematics had labeled as the primary research wing. Her radio, tuned to the frequency Iris had provided, suddenly crackled to life. A voice Maya hadn't heard in 6 years cut through the static like a knife. "Hello, Maya." Rachel's voice was exactly as she remembered it. Steady, professional being, hiding something that wanted to break through and scream. Maya's hand tightened on her weapon. "I'm here. Tell me where Lily is." "3rd floor east wing, room 317. But you already knew that from the schematics. Didn't you? Always so prepared, always thinking 3 moves ahead." Rachel's laugh was bitter and sharp. "I'm going to make this very simple. The bomb isn't here." Maya's blood went cold. "What?" "The bomb is at the federal building, 2 miles from here. I've got 200 government officials gathered there coordinating the response to my fake threat. Timer says 78 minutes. Rachel paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You have to choose, Maya, just like I had to choose. Save Lily and let me destroy the people who built this program, or save the officials and let my daughter stay a prisoner forever." Through the window, Maya could see movement on the 3rd floor. Federal agents moving in formation, clearing rooms systematically. They'd reach room 317 in minutes. Lily needs medical treatment, Maya said. Iris showed me the files. If we extract her, she goes into withdrawal. I know what happens to her. I've watched her suffer through cameras for 3 months. Watched her beg for medicine. Watched her cry for a mother who couldn't come. Rachel's voice finally cracked. Because of you. Because you chose the mission over my child. Now you get to feel what that choice costs. Maya looked at Owen at the desperate hope in his eyes that was about to be crushed. She looked at Iris, whose expression suggested she'd known this was coming all along. She looked at the stairwell that would take her up to Lily and the door that would take her out toward a building full of people who had no idea they'd been turned into pieces on Rachel's board. This isn't a choice, Maya said quietly. This is revenge. No, Rachel replied. Revenge would be simple. This is education. 77 minutes, Maya. Prove to me you've learned anything. The radio went silent. Maya stood in a corridor that smelled like smoke and copper, surrounded by people who were expecting her to have an answer, and felt the weight of 6 years collapse into this single moment. The math was simple. 200 lives versus 1. The mission versus the person. The same calculation she'd made in Tehran, except this time she couldn't pretend it was just numbers. Owen grabbed her arm. What are you doing? My daughter is 2 blocks from here. The others, they're all close. We came here to save them. Rachel's bomb isn't here. It's at the Federal Building. Maya pulled free and started moving toward the exit. I'm going to defuse it. What about Lily? Maya stopped, but didn't turn around. You want to storm the 3rd floor and extract a sick teenager from federal custody while this building is under assault? Be my guest. I'm going to try to keep 200 people from being vaporized. She heard Owen's breathing change to the sound of someone realizing that hope had been a luxury they couldn't afford. When he spoke again, his voice was flat. You're doing it again. You're choosing the mission over the person. I'm choosing 200 over 1, same as I always do. Maya started walking. That's what you hired me for. She made it 3 steps before Iris's voice stopped her cold. The 200 officials aren't the target, Maya. The families are. Maya turned slowly. Iris was standing by a monitor, her face illuminated by the screen's glow, her expression carefully neutral. I just accessed the Federal Building's security feed. Those aren't officials in there. Rachel had them diverted. The building is full of families, parents of the 30 children being held in this facility. Rachel brought them here, told them their kids were being released today. Then she locked them inside. The floor seemed to tilt. Maya crossed the distance to the monitor in 3 strides and stared at the screen. The Federal Building's main conference room was packed with people. Men and women in civilian clothes holding photographs of children looking scared and confused and desperately hopeful. 200 parents waiting for children who weren't coming. She's not trying to teach you the same lesson, Iris said quietly. She's trying to make you complicit in something worse. You save the parents, the program continues, and these children stay prisoners. You save the children, their parents die, and you've orphaned them all. Either way, you destroy families. Just like yours destroyed hers. Maya's hand moved before her brain caught up, grabbing Iris by the collar and slamming her against the wall. You knew the whole time, and you didn't tell me. Iris didn't fight back. I'm not here to help you, Maya. I'm here to document what you do when you run out of good options. Rachel wanted the world to see who you really are. What the hell does that mean? Iris reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen showed a live counter. 4,300,000 viewers. I've been streaming since we entered the tunnel. Every choice you've made, every person you've prioritized. I'm a journalist. This is the story Rachel hired me to tell. The woman who calculates lives like they're numbers on a spreadsheet, forced to prove her math in real time. Maya released her and stepped back, mind racing. 4 million people watching. Every decision documented. Every moment of hesitation turned into evidence of something she couldn't define but knew would be used against her. Owen's voice came from behind her, very quiet. You said we'd hate you for the choices you make. I didn't understand what you meant. Maya turned to face him and the others. They were looking at her with something between fear and recognition, the awful understanding that she'd been telling them the truth from the beginning. She wasn't a hero. She was someone who made calculations that left bodies behind. Change of plans, Maya said. She pointed at Owen and 2 others. You 3 come with me to the Federal Building. We'll try to clear the building before the bomb detonates. She pointed at the remaining 3. You're with Iris. Storm this facility. Get those kids out, all of them, including Lily. That's not possible, one of them said. We're not trained for that. Then learn fast or die slow. Those are your options. Maya checked her watch. 73 minutes. Iris, how many kids in this facility? 30, all being held on the third floor. Federal agents are already clearing that floor. They'll have the kids secured in 10 minutes. Maya's mind was moving through possibilities, discarding the impossible and focusing on the barely plausible. You don't need to fight them. You need to trigger a fire alarm and force an evacuation. Building procedure will require them to move all patients to the staging area. That's when you grab them and run. Run where? Iris asked. Away from here. Away from the federal building. Away from both blast zones. Maya started moving toward the exit. If I can't defuse Rachel's bomb, I'll at least make sure it only kills people who chose to be here. She was halfway to the door when Diane's voice stopped her. What about Lily's treatment? If we extract her, she goes into withdrawal. Then she goes into withdrawal, better alive and suffering than dead and comfortable. Maya pulled the door open. 72 minutes. Move. The city above ground was somehow worse than the tunnels below. Phoenix in lockdown looked like every disaster movie Maya had ever seen, except the fear was real and the chaos was unscripted. Empty streets, abandoned vehicles, windows dark behind federal security tape, drones humming overhead like mechanical locusts, watching everything and helping nothing. Maya and her 3 volunteers moved through the ghost city using the routes she'd memorized from satellite imagery. 2 blocks left turn service alley across the intersection during the drone's patrol pattern, another 3 blocks. The federal building rose ahead of them, a monument to bureaucratic architecture that was about to become a tomb if she couldn't find a way inside. The perimeter was lighter security than she'd expected. Rachel had planned this carefully, positioning the bomb during the chaos and then withdrawing her people before the government response solidified. That meant the real security would be inside, where Rachel could control the variables. Maya stopped at the corner of an office building 200 yards from her target and set up her rifle. Through the scope, she could see the federal building's entrance. 2 guards in tactical gear. Motion sensors on the doors. Security cameras covering every approach. Getting inside would require either authorization she didn't have or violence that would trigger an immediate response. There, Owen said, pointing. Loading dock on the south side, no visible security. Maya swung her scope to check. He was right, which was exactly why it was wrong. Rachel wouldn't leave an entrance unguarded unless she wanted someone to use it, which meant it was either trapped or monitored or both. That's the entrance, Maya said anyway. We go in quiet, we locate the bomb, we clear the civilians, and we pray Rachel gave me enough time to actually accomplish any of that. They moved in 2 pairs, Maya with Owen, the other 2 volunteers covering from a secondary position. The loading dock was accessed through a service door that hung open just enough to be inviting. Maya approached it like it was radioactive, checking for tripwires, pressure plates, anything that would turn their entry into a detonation. She found the camera instead, small commercial grade, positioned to capture anyone entering through this door. The red light was on, someone was watching. Rachel, or her people, or federal agents, Maya couldn't tell. She looked directly into the lens and mouthed 3 words, "I'm coming in." Then she pushed through the door into darkness that smelled like concrete and old fear. Her flashlight revealed a corridor that stretched deeper into the building. No guards, no immediate threats, just the kind of quiet that preceded violence. They moved through maintenance corridors that hadn't seen use in months, maybe years, dust on every surface, air that tasted stale. Maya led them up a service stairwell, counting floors, checking her mental map against the building's actual layout. The bomb would be positioned for maximum structural damage. That meant load-bearing walls, support columns, places where the building's weight would do Rachel's work for her. 3rd floor. Maya eased the door open and found herself staring down a hallway that should have been empty, but wasn't. People. Dozens of them crowded into a conference room visible through glass walls. They looked exactly like Iris had described. Parents holding photographs, checking phones that had no signal, waiting for news that would never come. And at the far end of the hall, partially concealed behind a structural column, Maya could see it. The bomb. Professional work C4 with a digital timer and enough redundancy to make diffusion nearly impossible. The display read 68 minutes. That's a lot of explosive, Owen whispered. Enough to collapse this floor into the one below and bring the whole building down. Maya scanned the corridor for security and found none. Too clean, too easy. Rachel wants me to find it. The question is why. She got her answer when her radio crackled again. You're probably wondering why I made this so simple. Rachel's voice filled the silence. It's because the bomb here doesn't matter. The real bomb was always at the facility. I told you it was here to make you choose. To make you abandon Lily the same way you did 6 years ago. But you didn't, did you? You sent someone else to get her while you played hero. Maya's stomach dropped. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your watch, Maya. By my count, Iris and her team should be triggering that fire alarm right about now. As if summoned, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Iris. 3 were alarm pulled, evacuating. Rachel continued, her voice almost gentle. The bomb at the facility is in the basement, southwest corner. It's set to detonate in 67 minutes. If it goes off, it kills everyone in the building. The children, the federal agents, your people, all of them. So here's your real choice. You can stay here and try to save these parents while your team dies, or you can abandon these civilians and run back to save the children. But you can't do both. The distance is too far. The time is too short. And I've finally put you in a position where the math doesn't matter anymore. The radio went silent. Maya stood frozen, her mind racing through calculations that kept coming up impossible. 1 mile between buildings, 67 minutes. Building full of children versus building full of parents. Her people trapped at both locations. No good options, no right answers. Just the choice that Rachel had been forcing her toward since the moment this started. Owen grabbed her arm. We have to go back. My daughter, the others, they're at the facility. And 200 people are here. What do you want me to choose? I want you to choose the people who trusted you. Maya pulled free and moved toward the bomb. Up close, she could see the sophistication of Rachel's work. Multiple triggers, redundant detonators, a system designed by someone who knew exactly how Maya would try to disarm it. She could spend 60 minutes working on this and still fail, or she could make a different choice. Maya pulled out her phone and called Iris. The facility bomb is real, southwest basement. You have 66 minutes to find it and move it somewhere away from people. Move it, Iris's voice was tight with stress. I'm not a bomb tech. You don't have to disarm it. Just get it outside. Throw it in an empty lot. Get the explosion away from the children. Maya was already moving back toward the stairwell. I'm coming to you. If you can't move it, at least get everyone clear. What about the parents? Maya looked back at the conference room full of people who had no idea they were standing in the center of Rachel's revenge. They'll have to save themselves. She ran, down the stairs through the maintenance corridor back out into the loading dock where the camera was still watching. She didn't care anymore who saw her. Let Rachel watch. Let the 4 million viewers watch. Let them all see what happened when you stripped away the pretense and forced someone to choose between bad and worse. Owen was keeping pace beside her, breathing hard, but moving. You're not really going to leave them. Watch me. Maya burst out into the street and started running toward the facility. 1 mile, 64 minutes. The math said it was possible. The reality said she was going to arrive just in time to fail. They made it 4 blocks before the first explosion lit up the sky behind them. Maya spun around to see the federal building's upper floors erupting in flame and debris. Not the massive collapse Rachel's bomb should have caused. Something smaller, premature detonation or secondary device, or a third option Maya hadn't considered. Smoke poured from shattered windows. Alarms that would never be answered wailed into the empty city. Her radio crackled, Rachel's voice but different now, unsteady. That wasn't supposed to happen yet. That wasn't supposed to. What did you do? Maya demanded. Nothing. I didn't do that. Someone else is here. Someone's inside the building. Rachel's breathing was audible now, ragged with something that might have been fear. Maya, I'm in the federal building. I was watching you. I was waiting for you to make your choice. But someone else triggered a device I didn't plant. This whole thing is wrong. This wasn't my plan. Maya's mind raced. If Rachel didn't trigger the explosion, who did? Who else had access? Who else had a motive? The answer hit her like cold water. She turned to look at Owen, who was staring at the burning building with an expression that wasn't quite right. Not shock, not horror, something closer to satisfaction. What did you do? Maya asked quietly. Owen didn't look at her. My daughter isn't at the facility. She was never at the facility. She's been dead for 3 years. Car accident. Drunk driver. I lied to you. Why wouldn't you know? Because Rachel Voss isn't the only person who wants you to understand what it feels like. Owen finally met her eyes. My daughter died while I was deployed overseas. I chose the mission over being there for her. Just like you taught me to. Just like every instructor and officer taught me to. Mission first. Always. And when I came home to bury her, all I had was a medal and the knowledge that I'd made the right choice. Maya's hand moved toward her weapon. Who are you? Someone who read Rachel's plan and decided to improve it. The real bomb isn't in the facility basement. It's distributed throughout the building's infrastructure. Small charges carefully placed. When they detonate, the whole structure comes down. I planted them 3 days ago before I ever came to your facility. Owen smiled, and it was the saddest thing Maya had ever seen. Rachel wanted you to choose between parents and children. I wanted you to choose between them and nothing. To realize that all your calculations and all your training and all your perfect decisions still end with everyone dead. He pulled a detonator from his pocket. Simple, commercial grade, the kind you could buy at any demolition supply store if you had the right credentials. 58 minutes, Owen said. That's when the facility explodes. You can spend those 58 minutes trying to disarm bombs I spent weeks placing perfectly. Or you can spend them getting those children as far away as possible. But the building comes down either way. The parents are already dead or dying in the federal building. The children are next, and you can't stop it. You can only watch it happen and know that you were never actually in control of anything. He pressed the button before Maya could stop him. Nothing happened. No explosion, no collapse. Just Owen's expression shifting from certainty to confusion to horror as he realized his dramatic moment had been undermined by faulty equipment or bad luck or divine intervention. Maya shot the detonator out of his hand. The device exploded into plastic fragments. Owen stumbled backward, clutching his wounded hand, and she was on him in an instant. She drove him to the ground with more force than necessary, knee in his back weapon pressed against his skull. How many charges? She demanded. Enough, scattered throughout the load-bearing walls. You'll never find them all in time. Maya pulled out her phone with her free hand and called Iris. Forget the bomb in the basement. The real threat is distributed charges in the walls. You need to evacuate now. Get those children out and run. You have 56 minutes. 56 minutes to get 30 children and federal agents to cooperate while the building is under siege. Iris's voice was strained. That's not possible. Make it possible. Maya ended the call and hauled Owen to his feet. You're going to show me where every charge is placed. You're going to help me disarm them. And you're going to pray I'm in a forgiving mood. I don't want your forgiveness, Owen said. I want you to understand what you've been doing to people for your entire career. Turning everything into math. Making choices that break families and then walking away because you followed orders. You're not a hero, Maya. You're a machine that calculates death. Maya pressed the gun harder against his skull. Then I guess we're both broken. Now move. They ran through the empty streets toward a building full of children and a timer that wouldn't stop counting. Behind them, the federal building burned with Rachel trapped somewhere inside her perfect revenge plan, hijacked by someone else's trauma. Ahead of them, 56 minutes was bleeding away into nothing, while Maya tried to remember if she'd ever actually believed that doing the right thing was supposed to feel like anything other than drowning. The scope of the situation hit her as they approached the facility. 56 minutes, 30 children, multiple bombs, federal agents who thought everyone in the building was a threat. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a 15-year-old girl who'd been paying for Maya's choice since she was 9. Maya's radio crackled one more time, Iris's voice tight with stress. We've got the children in the staging area, but there's a problem. Federal agents won't let us leave. They think we're Rachel's people. They've got us pinned down and they're not listening to reason. 55 minutes. Maya looked at Owen, at the blood dripping from his shattered hand, at the resignation in his eyes that said he'd already accepted his death. She looked at the facility ahead, where 30 children were trapped between bombs and federal agents in the clock that wouldn't stop. She made her choice. Iris, give me your position. I'm going to create a distraction big enough that the agents have to respond. You use the chaos to move the children out. You don't stop. You don't look back. You just run until you're clear of the blast radius. What kind of distraction? Maya chambered around. The kind where I become exactly what Owen thinks I am. She raised her rifle, found her target through the scope, and prepared to prove that sometimes the only way to save innocent lives was to take others. 54 minutes. The math was simple. The choice was impossible. And Maya was done pretending there was a difference. Maya didn't take the shot. Instead, she lowered the rifle and looked at Owen at the facility ahead, where 30 children were trapped at the timer in her head that wouldn't stop counting down. 53 minutes. She'd spent 6 years believing that precision was the answer. That if she calculated carefully enough, made her shots clean enough, maintained enough distance between herself and the consequences, she could avoid becoming the thing Rachel said she'd always been. But distance was a lie. The scope brought things closer, not further away. Every target she'd ever taken had a face, a name, a series of choices that had led them to that moment. And every bullet she'd fired had changed the world in ways she'd never see but would carry forever. I'm not going to shoot federal agents, Maya said. I'm going to talk to them. Owen stared at her. You think they'll listen? No, but I think Rachel will. Maya activated her radio. Rachel, I know you can hear me. You've been watching this whole time, monitoring the frequency, probably enjoying the show. So here's what I'm offering. I'll trade myself for the children. You wanted me to understand what I took from you. I understand now. So let them go and you can have what you've wanted for 6 years. Static. Then Rachel's voice weaker than before. What I wanted was my daughter. You can't give that back. No, but I can stop running from what I did. Maya started walking toward the facility's main entrance, hands raised, rifle slung across her back in a non-threatening position. I was wrong in Tehran. I chose the mission over your child because I thought that's what soldiers did. I thought that's what strength looked like. But it was just cowardice wearing a uniform. I was afraid of caring more about one person than the mission, so I pretended the math mattered more than the human being. And you paid the price for my fear. She could see movement through the facility windows now. Federal agents in tactical position, Iris and the children somewhere behind them, trapped between two kinds of danger. The math said this was stupid. The math said she was walking into a situation she couldn't control, with a plan that depended on mercy from someone who'd spent 6 years planning revenge. But the math had been lying to her all along. Rachel, you're still in the federal building. You're trapped, maybe hurt. The explosion wasn't part of your plan. Owen hijacked your revenge and turned it into something worse. Maya reached the facility steps and stopped making herself visible and vulnerable. But we can still stop this. You can call off whatever failsafe you built into his bombs. You can tell me how to disarm them. And I'll stay here. I'll face whatever consequences you think I deserve. Just let the children go. Silence stretched long enough that Maya thought Rachel had decided to let everyone die. Then her voice came back rough with smoke or tears or both. You really think it's that simple? You apologize and everything's forgiven. No, I think you'll hate me until the day you die, and you should. But I also think you're a mother who spent 6 years trying to save her daughter. And right now Lily is in that building with 29 other children who are just as trapped as she was. You can let your revenge kill them, or you can be what you always were. The person who chose people over mission. The person I should have listened to. The front door opened. A federal agent in full tactical gear emerged with his weapon raised. Behind him, Maya could see others taking position. She kept her hands visible and didn't move. I'm not armed, she said loudly. I'm not a threat. I'm just someone trying to stop 30 children from dying because adults couldn't figure out how to solve their problems without explosives. The agent didn't lower his weapon. On your knees, hands behind your head. Maya complied slowly, never breaking eye contact. There are bombs in this building, distributed charges in the load-bearing walls. You have 51 minutes before they detonate. You need to evacuate everyone now. We know about the bombs. We're handling it. No, you're not, because the person who planted them is the one who was supposed to be helping me stop them, and he's decided everyone should die to prove a philosophical point about moral calculations. Maya nodded toward Owen, who'd been following at a distance. Him. Owen Cross. He's not a student. He's not a victim. He's someone who's been planning this for weeks. The agent's attention shifted to Owen for just a second. That was enough. The doors burst open and children started pouring out, shepherded by Iris and the 3 volunteers Maya had sent with her. 30 kids ranging from 9 to 16, all looking terrified and sick and painfully young. The federal agents tried to stop them, but Iris had timed it perfectly. The moment of confusion when Maya had offered herself as a distraction. Run, Iris shouted. All of you run. The children scattered like startled birds. The agents tried to contain them, but they were trained for tactical situations, not hurting traumatized kids. Within seconds, the careful formation had dissolved into chaos. Maya used the confusion to roll sideways and come up moving, no longer compliant, no longer waiting for permission. She found Lily immediately. The resemblance to Rachel was unmistakable, even through 6 years of imprisonment and medical experimentation. The girl was pale, shaking, clearly sick from withdrawal. One of the volunteers was trying to support her, but Lily was barely conscious. Maya reached them in 4 strides. Give her to me. The volunteer looked uncertain but complied. Maya lifted Lily carefully, feeling how light she was, how fragile. The girl's eyes opened briefly, unfocused and glassy. Who are you? Lily whispered. Someone who should have saved you 6 years ago. Maya started moving toward the street, away from the building that was going to collapse in 48 minutes. But I'm not leaving you again. Federal agents were shouting. Iris was somewhere behind her, making sure the other children kept moving. And Owen was standing in the middle of it all, watching his perfect revenge unravel because people had chosen chaos over his carefully planned tragedy. Maya's radio crackled, Rachel's voice clearer now. Third floor of the federal building. I'm trapped in a server room. The fire's getting closer. I don't think I'm getting out. Maya kept moving but responded. Tell me how to disarm Owen's bombs. I can't. I don't know his system. I only knew about my own devices, and those were just smoke and mirrors to force your choice. Rachel coughed a wet sound that meant smoke inhalation. But there's something else. Something I need to tell you about the children. What about them? They're not sick. The government isn't treating them for anything. They're holding them because of what they might become. Rachel's voice was fading. All 30 children are offspring of operatives who were exposed to experimental enhancement protocols. Gene modifications designed to create better soldiers. The program was shut down 15 years ago, but the effects passed to offspring. These children have abilities that make them valuable, dangerous. The government's been studying them since birth. Maya looked down at Lily, at the girl who'd been a prisoner since she was 9. What kind of abilities? Lily can process visual information at speeds that shouldn't be possible. Pattern recognition, threat assessment, predictive modeling. By the time she was 8, she could watch a chess game and predict the outcome after 3 moves. The government decided that made her a national security asset. They took her after I was captured, told me she'd died so I'd stop looking. The revelation settled over Maya like a weight she'd never put down. 6 years ago, she'd chosen the mission over a child who'd already been marked by a system that turned children into weapons. She'd told Rachel the math mattered more than the person, and the whole time the people making that math had been no better than the enemies they claimed to fight. I'm getting you out, Maya said. Both of you. There's no time, the building's coming down. And even if you could reach me, I'm not the one you need to save. Rachel's voice softened. Lily matters. The other children matter. I spent 6 years trying to make you understand what I felt. Desperate, powerless, watching someone I loved suffer because people with power decided math mattered more than mercy. You understand now. I can hear it in your voice. So use that understanding. Save them. That's all I ever wanted. Rachel, tell Lily I'm sorry I couldn't be the mother she needed. Tell her the only thing I ever did right was refusing to stop loving her. The connection cut off before Maya could respond. She stood in the middle of an empty street holding a girl who weighed nothing, surrounded by scattered children and overwhelmed federal agents in the countdown that wouldn't stop. 45 minutes. 2 buildings rigged to explode. 1 woman trapped and dying. 30 children who'd spent their lives being treated as assets instead of human beings. The math said she had to choose. Maya was done with math. Iris, she shouted, get these children to the emergency staging area 4 blocks east. Federal agents either help her or stay out of the way, but stop treating traumatized kids like enemy combatants. Iris appeared at her side, breathing hard. What are you doing? Going back for Rachel. Maya handed Lily to Iris carefully. Get her to a real hospital, not a government facility. A civilian hospital where they'll treat her like a patient instead of an experiment. All of them. That's suicide. You'll never reach Rachel in time. Probably not, but I'm done calculating odds. Maya turned toward the federal building, toward the smoke rising from its upper floors, toward a choice that made no sense, except in the language of debt and guilt, and the knowledge that some things mattered more than survival. Make sure Lily knows her mother never stopped fighting for her. She ran before Iris could argue. Back through empty streets, past burning vehicles, toward a building that was already dying. The federal building's lobby was a catastrophe of smoke and debris and bodies of people who'd been in the wrong place when Owen's device had detonated early. Maya pulled her shirt over her mouth and moved through the destruction with the focused intensity of someone who'd accepted there was no going back. 3rd floor, server room. The stairwell was choked with smoke that turned the world into a gray nightmare. Maya climbed blind, one hand on the wall, breathing through fabric that was already soaked with sweat and particulates. Heat pressed down from above. Somewhere in the building, fire was consuming everything it touched. She found Rachel collapsed against a door, still clutching the radio, her face streaked with soot and blood. The scarring from her captivity was visible now, the missing eye and the damage that years of torture had carved into her features. She looked up as Maya approached, and something that might have been relief crossed her face. You're an idiot, Rachel said. Yeah. Maya crouched beside her and assessed the damage. Burns on Rachel's arms, smoke inhalation that had turned her breathing into a ragged wheeze, Possible internal injuries from the blast. Definitely not mobile on her own. Can you walk? Does it matter? It matters if we're getting out of here. Maya pulled Rachel's arm over her shoulder and hauled her upright. The woman was heavier than Lily, but lighter than she should have been. 6 years of survival had burned away everything except will and rage and the love for a daughter that had driven her to orchestrate mass violence. They made it 10 feet before Rachel's legs gave out. Maya caught her and lowered her to the floor, already knowing the mass she'd been trying to ignore. Rachel was too injured. The building was too damaged. The time was too short. They weren't getting out together. Leave me, Rachel said. You've got maybe 35 minutes before this whole structure comes down. That's enough time to get yourself out, not both of us. I'm not leaving you. Why not? You did it before. Rachel's laugh turned into a cough that sounded wet and painful. I gave you the perfect out, the mission over the person. It's what you're good at. Maya looked at the woman who'd been her partner, her mentor, her friend before fear and duty and impossible choices had turned them into enemies. I was wrong in Tehran. I told you the mission mattered more than one person, but I was lying to myself. I was afraid of caring too much, afraid that if I let myself feel what you were feeling, I'd lose the ability to make the hard choices. So I hid behind the math and told myself that made me strong, but it just made me a coward. You think apologizing changes anything? No, I think 6 years ago I broke something that can't be fixed. I think you have every right to hate me. I think if positions were reversed, I'd do exactly what you did. Try to make me understand what it costs. Maya shifted her grip and started dragging Rachel toward the stairs. But I also think Lily deserves to know her mother didn't die in this building, that someone tried to save you the way you tried to save her, even if it doesn't work. They made it to the stairwell. Smoke was thicker here, burning Maya's lungs with every breath. Rachel's weight was a constant reminder of how impossible this was. 3 floors down, 33 minutes. Math that didn't care about redemption or guilt or any of the things that made people human. Maya, Rachel's voice was barely audible. The facility. Owen's bombs. There's a kill switch. Where? Not where. Who? Rachel fumbled in her pocket and pulled out a phone, its screen cracked but still functional. Owen's not working alone. He couldn't plant that many charges without help. Someone on the inside. Federal agent who lost family in one of our operations. Someone who thought the program needed to be destroyed from within. Who? Rachel pulled up a contact, a name Maya didn't recognize. A photo that showed a young man in federal tactical gear. Agent Thomas Morrison. He's the one who triggered the early detonation at this building. He's also the one who can disarm the facility charges. But he won't. Not unless someone makes him understand that killing children to expose a program makes him exactly what he's trying to destroy. Maya took the phone. Where is he? Probably still at the facility, watching his revenge play out, waiting for the moment when everything comes down and proves his point about institutional corruption. Rachel's breathing was getting worse. You need to get out. Call him. Stop this. Let me go. No. They reached the second floor. Heat was oppressive now, suggesting fire had spread through the ventilation system. Maya's vision was blurring from smoke and exhaustion. Rachel was dead weight in her arms, barely conscious, her breathing shallow and irregular. The math was screaming at Maya to drop her and run. Maya kept moving. First floor. The lobby was unrecognizable, transformed by fire into something from a nightmare. The main exit was blocked by debris. Maya pivoted toward the loading dock where she'd entered, dragging Rachel through destruction that hadn't existed 20 minutes ago. Every breath was agony. Every step was a choice to keep going when stopping would have been so much easier. They made it outside with 28 minutes left. Maya laid Rachel on the pavement and called for medical help that might not come. Federal response was focused on the facility. This building was already written off as a loss, but she tried anyway because trying was all that mattered now. Rachel's good eye opened. Lily, is she safe? Iris got her out. All the children. They're clear of both blast zones. Maya checked Rachel's pulse, found it weak but present. You need to hold on. Medical's coming. No, they're not. Rachel reached up and grabbed Maya's hand with surprising strength. But that's okay. I did what I needed to do. Lily's alive. The program's exposed. And you finally understand what I've been trying to teach you. What's that? That the weight is proof we're human, proof we care. The day it stops feeling heavy is the day we've lost something essential. Rachel's grip loosened. You're going to carry this forever. Carry it well. Use it for something that matters. Rachel, go stop Owen's friend. Save those children again. Prove you've learned the lesson. Rachel's breathing hitched. And tell Lily I'm sorry for everything I couldn't be, everything I couldn't stop. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to insist medical help was coming, wanted to believe that not everyone had to die to balance the scales. But Rachel's eye was already closing, her breathing slowing, her body surrendering to injuries that had been fatal from the moment she'd chosen to stay in a burning building rather than abandon her revenge. I'll tell her, Maya said. I'll make sure she knows you never stopped fighting for her. Rachel's hand went slack. Her breathing stopped. And Maya was alone with a body that used to be a person who'd taught her how to shoot, how to think tactically, how to make the hard choices that defined a career in precision violence. The person who'd also taught her that some choices broke you in ways that never healed. Maya stood and started running toward the facility. 26 minutes. She called the number Rachel had given her while she ran, not expecting an answer, but getting one anyway. Who is this? A young man's voice tight with stress. My name is Maya Garrett. Rachel Voss gave me your number. I know who you are and what you're planning. I know you want to expose the program. I know you think the only way to fix a broken system is to destroy it completely. But you're wrong. The government's been holding children prisoner for years, experimenting on them, turning them into weapons. And no one stopped it. No one even knew it existed until Rachel forced it into the open. So yeah, maybe complete destruction is exactly what's needed. Maya pushed herself faster, her lungs burning. Those children are out. All of them. Clear of the building. If you detonate those charges now, you're not destroying a program. You're just killing federal agents who are following orders they probably didn't understand. That doesn't expose corruption. That just creates more victims. 30 children spent years as prisoners. Their parents died or were disappeared or were driven insane trying to find them. The people who built that program need to pay a price. Then let them pay it in courts, in investigations, and public exposure. Rachel's footage is already out there. Iris streamed everything. 4 million people watched us pull those children from a government black site. The program's already dead. You don't need to kill anyone else to prove your point. Silence on the line. Maya could hear breathing ragged with indecision. She was 3 blocks from the facility now. 24 minutes. She could see federal vehicles, agents in tactical gear, the chaos of an operation that had spiraled beyond anyone's control. My sister was one of them, Morrison said finally. Born with abilities she didn't ask for. Taken when she was 7. I was 12. I watched them load her into a van and drive away, and my parents couldn't do anything because men in suits said it was national security. I spent 15 years trying to find her, and when I finally did, she was already dead. Suicide. Couldn't live with what they'd done to her. His voice broke. So forgive me if I don't think courts and investigations are good enough. Maya reached the facility perimeter. Agents were everywhere trying to establish order, while children were still being moved to safety. She could see Lily among them, conscious now, talking to a paramedic. Alive because people had chosen her over the mission, over the math, over the calculations that turned human beings into variables. I can't forgive you, Maya said, because I'm the person who made the same calculations you're making now. I chose mission over person, math over mercy, and it destroyed everyone it touched. Rachel's dead. She died in the federal building 10 minutes ago, trying to make me understand what I'd done. And the last thing she said was that some weights prove we're human, that the day it stops feeling heavy is the day we've lost something essential. What's your point? My point is that detonating those bombs won't make your sister's death mean anything. It'll just prove that the system broke you the same way it broke her. That you became what you hate because you couldn't figure out how to live with the weight of what they did to you. Maya found Morrison in the crowd now, a young agent standing apart from the others, phone pressed to his ear, staring at the building that was supposed to be his revenge. But you can choose differently. You can let those people live. You can carry the weight without letting it turn you into something your sister wouldn't recognize. You can be the person she needed back then, even if it's too late to save her. Morrison met her eyes across 50 yards of space. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, weighing the choice that would define the rest of his life. Kill people who'd enabled evil, or let them live and trust that justice could happen without revenge. How do I know they won't cover this up? He asked. How do I know this won't just disappear like everything else? You don't. None of us know what happens next. But you can make sure that whatever happens, you're not the one who killed people to prove a point. That you're better than the system that broke your family. Maya started walking toward him, hands visible, non-threatening. Disarm the bombs. Let those agents go home to their families. And then help me make sure everyone knows what happened here. Help me make sure your sister's story and Lily's story and all those children's stories don't get buried by people who'd rather forget than face what they've done. Morrison's hand was shaking. The phone trembled against his ear. Maya could see the struggle in his face, the war between the part of him that wanted blood and the part that still remembered what it felt like to be a kid watching his sister disappear. 18 minutes, he said. That's enough time if you start now. And after I disarm them and everyone sees what the program did, what happens to me? Probably prison, probably court-martial, probably a lot of years paying for the choices you made today. Maya reached him and stopped just out of arm's reach. But you'll be paying for something you chose to stop, not something you chose to finish. And that matters. Not to the system, not to the people judging you, but to you, to the person you see in the mirror every day for the rest of your life. Morrison closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not surrender exactly, more like the acceptance that comes when you finally stop fighting the current and let it carry you somewhere you didn't plan to go. I need access to the basement, he said, in 20 minutes. And everyone needs to clear the building in case I'm wrong about the disarm sequence. Maya called Iris and relayed the information. Within 5 minutes, the facility was evacuated except for Morrison and Maya. They moved through empty corridors that still smelled like smoke and fear down to the basement where Owen had supposedly planted his bombs. Morrison worked with the focused intensity of someone who'd spent weeks planning every detail. Why'd you help Owen? Maya asked while he worked. I didn't. Not really. We were both doing our own operations that happened to overlap. He wanted to prove philosophers about moral calculations wrong. I wanted to destroy a program that had destroyed my family. Rachel was the one trying to make you understand what you'd taken from her. We all had our own reasons. We just happened to aim them at the same target. Morrison pulled the cover off a wall-mounted electrical panel and started disconnecting wires. The charges are tied to the building's infrastructure. Cut the power wrong, they detonate. Cut it right, they disarm. Owen showed me the sequence, but I never thought I'd actually use it. Why not? Because up until 10 minutes ago, I wanted everyone in this building to die. Agents, administrators, everyone who'd enabled the program. I wanted the whole structure to collapse and take them with it. He glanced at Maya. You changed my mind, not because you convinced me they deserve mercy, but because you convinced me my sister wouldn't want me to become a killer in her name. The final wire came loose. Morrison stepped back and checked his phone. That's the last one. Building's clear. Charges are disarmed. Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Thank you. Don't thank me. I still destroyed the federal ball building. I still set this whole thing in motion. People died because of what I did. Morrison started walking toward the exit. But at least I can tell myself I stopped before it got worse. That counts for something, right? It counts for everything, Maya said. They emerged into daylight that seemed impossibly bright after the darkness of the basement. Federal agents were waiting, weapons raised, clearly aware that Morrison was responsible for at least part of the day's catastrophe. He raised his hands without being asked and dropped to his knees. Agent Thomas Morrison, he said clearly, I planted the device that destroyed the federal building's upper floors. I conspired with Owen Cross to expose illegal government programs through acts of domestic terrorism. I'm surrendering voluntarily and will cooperate fully with investigation. They took him away in restraints. Maya watched him go and wondered if he'd find peace in prison or if the weight would crush him eventually. Wondered if there was any real difference between the choices he'd made and the ones she'd made. Wondered if redemption was even possible or if some things just broke you permanently. Iris appeared at her side. Rachel. Didn't make it out of the federal building, smoke inhalation and burns. She died getting me the information we needed to stop Morrison. Maya looked at the facility, at the children being loaded into ambulances, at the chaos that would take months to sort through. But she got what she wanted. Lily's safe, the program's exposed. And I finally understand what she was trying to teach me. What's that? That the wait is proof we're human. Maya started walking toward where Lily was being treated by paramedics. And that some choices change you in ways you can't calculate or predict or control. All you can do is carry them forward and hope that eventually the wait starts to feel like purpose instead of punishment. She reached Lily as the paramedics were finishing their assessment. The girl looked up at her with eyes that were too old for her face, the kind of eyes that came from years of being treated as a thing instead of a person. You're Maya, Lily said. It wasn't a question. Yes. My mother talked about you on the radio. I heard some of it before they evacuated us. Lily's voice was steady despite everything. She said you were the person who taught her that sometimes caring too much makes you weak. But she also said you were wrong about that. Maya crouched down to be at eye level. Your mother was right about a lot of things. She was the strongest person I ever knew, and I was too afraid to see it. She pulled Rachel's phone from her pocket and handed it to Lily. She wanted you to know she never stopped fighting for you. Everything she did, even the terrible things she did because she loved you more than anything else in the world. Lily took the phone with hands that shook slightly. Is she alive? Maya wanted to lie, wanted to soften the blow, wanted to give this girl who'd already lost so much something other than more loss. But Lily deserved the truth the way her mother had deserved it 6 years ago. No, she died saving me so I could save you. She made sure I understood what mattered before she let go. Maya reached out and took Lily's hand. I'm sorry I didn't come for you 6 years ago. I'm sorry your mother had to become something she wasn't to make me understand what I'd done. I'm sorry for all of it. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed Maya's hand with surprising strength. My mother used to tell me that some people can see patterns no one else sees. She said that was my gift, the ability to look at chaos and find the order underneath. She looked directly at Maya. I can see the pattern in you. You made a terrible choice that hurt people. Then you spent years running from it. Then you came back and tried to fix it even though you knew it was probably too late. That's not redemption. That's just what being human looks like when you stop lying to yourself. The words hit Maya harder than any accusation could have. She'd been expecting hatred or anger or at least the cold distance that trauma created. Instead, she was getting understanding from someone who should have every reason to refuse it. What happens to you now? Maya asked. I don't know. Foster system, probably. They can't send me back to whatever family I had before. I don't even remember them. Lily looked at the other children being loaded into ambulances. But at least I'm not alone, and at least someone finally chose us over the mission. Maya stood as the paramedics indicated they needed to transport Lily to the hospital. She watched the ambulance pull away and felt the weight of 6 years pressed down on her shoulders. Rachel was dead. Owen was in custody. Morrison would spend decades in prison. 30 children would spend years trying to recover from what had been done to them. And Maya would carry all of it forward into whatever came next. 3 weeks passed before Maya had to face the consequences formally. Federal courtroom charges that ranged from breaking quarantine to interfering with federal operations to aiding known terrorists. The prosecution painted her as someone who'd enabled violence. The defense painted her as someone who'd prevented worse violence. Both were true. Both were inadequate to explain what had actually happened. Lily testified on her behalf, stood in front of a judge and explained that Maya Garrett had saved her life, that her mother had been wrong about methodology but right about Maya's capacity to change, that sometimes the only way to fix a system was to break it open and let everyone see what was inside. The other children testified too. 29 kids who'd spent years as prisoners suddenly given voices and platform and the power to tell their stories to people who had to listen. Their testimony destroyed what remained of the program's credibility. By the time the trial ended, 6 officials were facing criminal charges. The program was officially dissolved, and Maya was sentenced to 3 years suspended with 5 years probation and a permanent ban from working in private security. She walked out of the courthouse expecting to feel relief or vindication or at least the satisfaction of having paid some portion of her debt. Instead, she just felt tired. The weight was still there. It would always be there. But Lily had been right. That's what being human looked like when you stopped lying to yourself. 6 months later, Maya was working at a veterinary clinic in Colorado when the letter arrived. Plain envelope, neat handwriting postmarked from a juvenile facility where Lily was receiving treatment and education, while the state figured out what to do with 30 children who'd been turned into government assets. Maya opened it standing in the clinic's break room, surrounded by the mundane reality of a life that had nothing to do with rifles or moral calculations or the kind of choices that broke people permanently. The letter was short. They're letting me write now. Mom said I shouldn't, but I wanted to thank you, not for saving me. You did that, but it's not the thing that matters most. I want to thank you for letting my mother's sacrifice mean something. She spent 6 years trying to teach you a lesson. You spent 72 hours learning it. That's not redemption. That's not closure, but it's honest. And honesty is the only thing that survived everything that happened. I'm going to live with what was done to me. You're going to live with what you did. We're both going to carry weight that never gets lighter. But Mom taught me something before they took her away. She said the weight is proof we're still capable of caring. The day it stops feeling heavy is the day we become the kind of people who created the program in the first place. So carry it well. Use it for something that matters. And know that I don't hate you. I understand you. Sometimes that's more important. Maya folded the letter and put it in her pocket. Through the window, she could see the mountains rising in the distance, indifferent and eternal. She'd spent 6 years trying to find peace in isolation and distance, in the pretense that if she stopped carrying, the weight would disappear. But peace wasn't the absence of weight. It was learning to carry it towards something that mattered. The clinic door chimed. A young woman entered mid-20s with the kind of purposeful movement that suggested military training. She approached the counter where Maya was organizing files. "Excuse me, are you Maya Garrett?" Maya looked up wary. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sophie Morrison, Thomas Morrison's younger sister, the one who wasn't taken, the one who grew up normal while my sister was being experimented on." Sophie pulled out an envelope. "My brother asked me to give you this. He's in federal prison, won't be eligible for parole for 12 years. But he wanted you to know something." Maya took the envelope but didn't open it. "What?" "That he thinks about your conversation every day. The one where you told him he could choose to stop before it got worse. He says it's the only reason he can sleep at night, knowing he made one choice that his sister would have been proud of even if all the choices before it were terrible." Sophie shifted her weight uncomfortably. "I'm applying to social work programs, specializing in kids who've been through institutional trauma. Someone needs to help those 30 children learn how to be normal. Might as well be someone who understands what was taken from them." "That's good work," Maya said quietly. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I know my sister is still dead and those kids still went through hell, and my brother is still going to prison for most of his adult life. But it's something." Sophie turned to leave, then paused. "He also said to tell you that carrying the weight gets easier. Not lighter, just easier, whatever that means." After Sophie left, Maya opened Morrison's letter. It contained a single sentence. "Thank you for reminding me that the math doesn't matter as much as the choice, Mom." Maya stood in the empty clinic holding letters from two people who should hate her, surrounded by the ordinary debris of a life that had nothing to do with who she used to be. The weight was still there. It would always be there. Rachel's death, the years Lily had lost, the children who'd been experimented on, the federal agents who'd died in the building collapse. All of it pressing down on her shoulders in ways that would never fully resolve. But Lily had been right. The weight was proof she was still human, still capable of caring, still able to choose people over calculations, even when the calculations said she was being stupid. The door chimed again. Maya looked up, expecting another client, and found herself staring at a teenage girl with dark hair and Rachel's eyes. Lily Voss stood in the doorway of the clinic, looking healthier than she had 6 months ago, but still carrying the kind of damage that took years to heal. "They gave me a weekend pass," Lily said. "Supervised release to visit approved locations. I put you on the list." Maya came around the counter slowly. "Why, Quom?" "Because everyone keeps asking me if I'm okay. Therapists, social workers, lawyers, foster families. They all want to know if I'm healing, if I'm processing my trauma, if I'm ready to be integrated back into normal society." Lily's expression was complicated, layered with things that didn't have simple names. "But no one asked if I understand what happened, if I can see the pattern underneath all the chaos. Can you?" "Yes, and I wanted to tell you what I see." Lily walked further into the clinic, looking at the veterinary equipment with the kind of intense focus Maya recognized from herself. "I see 3 people who made terrible choices for complicated reasons. My mother loved me so much it turned her into a terrorist. You were so afraid of caring that you hid behind math until it broke you. Morrison wanted justice so badly he became the thing he hated. None of you were heroes. None of you were villains. You were just humans trying to carry weight that was too heavy for anyone to manage alone." Maya felt something crack in her chest, the careful wall she'd built starting to come down. "What do you need from me, Lily? I need to know if you're going to keep running or if you're going to stay and help." Lily met her eyes directly. "There are 29 other kids like me. Kids who were told their whole lives that they were valuable because of what they could do, not who they were. Kids who are going to grow up trying to figure out how to be normal when normal was stolen from them before they understood what it meant. Someone needs to help them. Someone who understands what it costs to be treated like a weapon instead of a person. I'm not a therapist. I'm not qualified to help children process trauma. You're qualified to tell them the truth, that the people who hurt them weren't monsters. They were humans who chose mission over mercy, math over meaning, protocol over people, and that the only way to make sure it doesn't happen again is to remember what it felt like to be reduced to a calculation. Lily's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. You're qualified because you're the one who finally chose us over the mission. Even though it was too late, even though it couldn't fix what was broken, you still chose us. And that matters. Maya looked at this girl who should hate her, who had every right to want nothing to do with her, who was instead offering her a purpose that might actually justify the weight she'd been carrying. She thought about Rachel in the burning building, using her last breath to make sure Maya understood what mattered. She thought about Morrison in prison, finding peace in the one choice he'd made to stop rather than continue. She thought about 6 years of running from the things she'd done and how running had never actually created distance. I don't know if I can help, Maya said honestly. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. Neither do I. But you're the person who's here. You're the person who understands. And you're the person my mother died believing could still learn to care more about people than missions. Lily pulled out a folded piece of paper. There's a youth advocacy group forming, specifically for the kids who were in the program. They need adults who understand what happened, adults who can talk to media, to lawyers, to the families trying to figure out how to help. I gave them your name. Maya took the paper. It had contact information for a nonprofit that didn't exist 6 months ago, created specifically to help children who'd been turned into government assets learn how to be people again. The mission statement talked about dignity and humanity and the right to be seen as more than the sum of your abilities. I'll think about it, Maya said. Good. Lily turned to leave, then stopped at the door. My mother told me once that every bullet changes the world in ways you can't predict. She meant it as a warning about the weight of violence. But I think it's true for every choice. Every moment where you decide what matters more. You chose bullets over people for years. Then you chose people over bullets when it counted. Both choices change the world. The question is which world you want to live in going forward. After Lily left, Maya sat in the quiet clinic and looked at the paper in her hands. A phone number, an email address, an invitation to stop running and start carrying the weight towards something that might actually matter. She thought about Rachel's last words, about carrying the weight well, about using it for something that proved you were still human. She picked up her phone and made the call before she could talk herself out of it. 3 months later, Maya stood in a community center in Denver in front of 19 teenagers who'd spent years being told they were valuable because of what they could do, not who they were. Lily sat in the front row, calm and attentive. The others ranged from suspicious to hostile to desperately hopeful. My name is Maya Garrett, she began. 6 years ago, I made a choice that destroyed lives. I chose a mission over a person. Math over mercy, protocol over humanity. I told myself that's what soldiers did. That strength meant being able to make the hard choices without letting emotion compromise the mission. I was wrong. She paused, letting the words settle. Some of the kids were listening. Others were staring at the floor or their phones or anywhere except at her. I'm not here to teach you how to process trauma. I'm not qualified for that. I'm here to tell you the truth about the people who hurt you. They weren't monsters. They were humans who convinced themselves that what you could do mattered more than who you were. They reduced you to calculations, variables in an equation, assets to be managed rather than people to be protected. And they did it because that's what systems do when no one stops them. When no one says that math doesn't matter as much as mercy. One of the kids raised a hand. A boy, maybe 16, with anger written across his face. So what? We're supposed to forgive them, understand their perspective, act like what they did was okay because they had reasons. No, Maya said firmly. You're supposed to make sure you never become them. You're supposed to remember what it felt like to be reduced to your abilities and refuse to do that to anyone else. You're supposed to carry the weight of what was done to you and use it to make sure the next generation doesn't carry the same weight. That's not fair, another kid said. We didn't ask for this. We didn't choose to be experiments. Why do we have to carry anything? Because the alternative is letting it turn you into something you're not. Letting the people who hurt you define who you become. Maya looked at Lily, who nodded slightly. Someone very wise told me recently that the weight is proof we're still human. That the day it stops feeling heavy is the day we've lost something essential. You're going to carry what was done to you for the rest of your lives. The question is whether you carry it as anger that poisons everything you touch, or as understanding that helps you see when systems are turning people into calculations again. The room was silent. Maya had expected arguments or questions or at least resistance. Instead, she got the attention of 19 kids who understood weight in ways most people never would. I'm not here to tell you it gets better, Maya continued. I'm here to tell you it gets different. The anger doesn't disappear, the trauma doesn't heal completely, but you learn to carry it towards something that matters. You learn that some choices change the world in ways you can't predict. And you learn that the only way to make sure what happened to you means something is to use it to protect the people who come after you. After the session ended, several kids approached her with questions. Some wanted to know about the program, about what had happened to the officials, about whether justice was even possible. Others just wanted to know if Maya really believed what she was saying, or if it was just another adult telling them what they wanted to hear. Lily waited until the others had left before approaching. You did good, better than I expected. I have no idea what I'm doing. Neither do we, that's why it works. Lily pulled out her phone and showed Maya a message. Sophie Morrison is organizing a documentary about the program. She wants interviews with survivors, with you, with anyone willing to go on record about what happened. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Probably not, but it's the right thing to do. Make sure people understand what happened. Make sure it can't be buried or forgotten or dismissed as conspiracy theory. Lily put her phone away. You taught me something today. You taught me that carrying weight towards something meaningful is how you prove it hasn't broken you. So I'm going to tell my story. All of it. The good, the bad, the parts that make me look weak or broken or damaged. Because someone needs to make sure the world knows what happens when systems treat people like equations. Maya felt pride and fear in equal measure. You're 16. You don't have to carry that burden yet. I'm 16 and I've been carrying it since I was 9. The only difference now is I get to choose what I'm carrying it toward. Lily smiled, and it was Rachel's smile, fierce and determined and absolutely uncompromising. Mom died making sure you understood what matters. I'm going to live making sure everyone else understands too. That's how her sacrifice means something. 6 months after that conversation, Maya stood in a different kind of room. Federal building in Washington, D.C., not Phoenix. Congressional hearing about illegal government programs and institutional overreach and the systematic abuse of children in the name of national security. She sat at a table with Lily on one side and Sophie Morrison on the other, facing cameras and legislators and a public that was finally paying attention. State your name for the record, the chairman said. Maya Garrett, former Marine Scout sniper, currently working with youth advocacy programs for survivors of institutional trauma. Ms. Garrett, you were directly involved in the events that exposed the experimental enhancement program. Can you describe for this committee what you witnessed? Maya took a breath and began telling the story. Not the sanitized version, not the one that made her look like a hero or absolved her of responsibility. The real story, the one where she made terrible choices for terrible reasons and people died and a woman she'd loved like a mentor had spent 6 years orchestrating revenge that ended with her death in a burning building. She told them about Tehran, about choosing mission over person, about Rachel's capture and the execution of hostages, and the years spent running from guilt she couldn't outrun. She told them about Phoenix, about bombs and choices, and 30 children who'd been held prisoner by people who thought abilities mattered more than humanity. And she told them about weight, about how carrying it was proof you were still human, about how the only way to make terrible choices mean something was to use them to prevent the next generation from having to make the same choices. When she finished, the room was silent. Then one of the legislators leaned forward, expression grave. Ms. Garrett, do you believe you've been redeemed for the choices you made in Tehran? Maya looked at Lily, at this girl who should hate her, but instead had chosen to understand her. She thought about Rachel dying in a building that wouldn't stop burning. She thought about Morrison in prison and Owen in psychiatric custody and all the bodies left behind by people who thought they were doing the right thing. No, Maya said clearly. Redemption isn't possible for some choices. What I did broke something that can't be fixed. Rachel Voss should be alive. Lily Voss should have grown up with her mother. Those children should never have been prisoners. I can't redeem that. All I can do is carry it forward and make sure I'm pointing towards something that matters. That's not redemption. That's just responsibility. The hearing continued for another 3 hours. Testimony from doctors who'd worked in the program, from officials who'd enabled it, from families who'd lost children, to a system that valued abilities over humanity. By the end, it was clear that heads would roll and policies would change, and the program was dead in any official sense. But Maya knew better than to believe that solved anything. Systems didn't die. They just evolved and found new ways to reduce people to calculations. Someone would always think that math mattered more than mercy, that missions mattered more than people, that the right answer was whatever produced the best numerical outcome. Her job was to make sure that when they did, there were people ready to say no. People who'd learned the hard way that the weight of choosing wrong was heavier than the satisfaction of being right. People who understood that sometimes the only way to prove you were still human was to choose compassion over calculation, even when the calculation said compassion was stupid. After the hearing, Lily found her in the hallway outside the chamber. "You did good in there. Mom would have been proud. Your mother would have wanted me to do this 6 years ago." Maybe. But she also understood that people need time to learn lessons that matter. Lily pulled out an envelope. "I've been accepted to college. Early admission. They are letting me start next fall despite everything." "That's wonderful. I'm going to study psychology, specifically trauma and institutional abuse. Someone needs to understand what was done to us well enough to prevent it from happening to the next generation." Lily handed Maya the envelope. "But I wanted you to have this first." Inside was a photograph. Rachel and Lily taken some time before the capture, before Tehran, before everything went wrong. They were smiling at the camera, Rachel's arm around her daughter's shoulders, both of them looking happy in the way people look when they don't know how fragile happiness is. "I found this in Mom's belongings. They released them to me last month." Lily's voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "I wanted you to have it, not as punishment or reminder or anything like that, just as proof that she was happy once. For the choices and the consequences and the weight. She was just a mother who loved her daughter, and that's what I want to remember most." Maya looked at the photograph and felt the weight press down harder than it had in months. Rachel smiling, Rachel whole. Rachel before Maya had broken her by choosing mission over mercy, math over meaning, protocol over people. "Thank you," Maya said, because there were no other words adequate. Lily nodded and walked away, leaving Maya alone in a government hallway holding a photograph of someone who died teaching her a lesson she should have learned 6 years earlier. The weight was still there. It would always be there, but she was carrying it differently now. Not as punishment to be endured, but as purpose to be fulfilled. She walked out of the federal building into a Washington afternoon that was trying to pretend spring was coming, despite the cold. Across the street, Sophie Morrison was being interviewed by news crews about her documentary. Down the block, lawyers were filing papers that would keep officials in court for years. And somewhere in the city, 19 teenagers who'd been government experiments were trying to figure out how to be normal when normal had been stolen from them before they understood what it meant. Maya pulled out her phone and looked at the contacts she'd accumulated over the last year. Lily, Sophie, the advocacy group, the therapist, the lawyers, the journalist, a whole network of people who'd decided that carrying weight towards something meaningful was better than being crushed by it. She made a call to the advocacy group coordinator. "This is Maya Garrett. I'm in DC for another 2 days. If there are any kids in the area who need someone to talk to, someone who understands what it's like to be reduced to calculations, I'm available." The coordinator sounded surprised but pleased. "Actually, we have 3 families that just relocated here. Kids from the program who are trying to integrate into new schools, new communities. They're struggling. If you have time, I can set up meetings." "Set them up. I'll be there." She ended the call and started walking, not toward her hotel or the airport or any destination that made practical sense. Just walking, letting the movement carry her forward the way it had in Afghanistan and Iraq and all the other places where she'd learned that the only way to survive was to keep moving even when you didn't know where you were going. Her phone buzzed, a text from Lily. "Mom used to say that every bullet changes the world. I think every choice does too. Thank you for choosing us. Even when it was too late. Even when it couldn't fix what was broken. Thank you for proving that people can learn to care more about mercy than math. That's what I'll remember most when I tell people about you." Maya stopped walking and read the message 3 times. Then she looked up at the sky, at clouds moving in patterns that meant nothing except what you chose to see in them, and felt something that might have been peace or might have been acceptance or might have been the first step toward understanding that redemption wasn't the point. The point was carrying the weight well, using it for something that mattered, choosing people over calculations even when the calculations said you were being stupid. That's what being human looked like when you stopped lying to yourself. Maya put her phone away and kept walking. Toward the meetings with traumatized kids. Toward the advocacy work that would consume her evenings and weekends. Toward a life that looked nothing like the one she'd planned, but felt more honest than anything she'd done in years. The weight was still there. It would always be there. Rachel's death, Lily's lost childhood, the 30 children who'd been experiments, the federal agents who'd died in burning buildings, the missions she'd chosen over people, the calculations she'd made that reduced human beings to numbers. But the weight was proof she was still human, still capable of caring, still able to choose differently, even when differently meant harder. And that was enough. Not redemption, not closure, not peace. Just enough to keep walking forward, carrying the weight towards something that mattered, proving with every step that people were worth more than the math suggested, always had been, always would be. She walked until the sun started setting, painting the buildings in shades of gold and red that reminded her of fire and hope in equal measure. Then she turned toward her hotel, towards sleep that would be interrupted by nightmares that never fully faded, toward another day of carrying weight that never got lighter, but somehow became possible to bear. And somewhere in the spaces between what she'd done and what she was trying to become, Maya Garrett finally understood what Rachel had been trying to teach her all along, that the weight was the point, the proof, the purpose, and that carrying it well was the only redemption worth seeking.